All right, we're back. We are COMP3025 in the winter 2017 semester, and here at Georgian, Mobile and Pervasive Computing, week 5, part 2 of our broadcast. And we're talking about assignment 2, which I posted up on Blackboard. So what is this assignment? It's actually something you guys have seen before if you've done COMP3068, however, with a bit of a twist, of course. So week 7, this is when this thing is due, so the exam week, right? Again, we're doing the exam on week 7. Next week, we'll do a review and Ionic 2, just go into more how to build an Ionic 2 app with more detail. What are you building? You're building this Ionic to-do list. Now, I'm saying you have to use the Ionic framework, AngularJS 2, and TypeScript to create an app that displays a list of to-do or tasks, and the data for your to-do list should persist only while you're running the app. So I'm not asking for data persistence at this point. There's a reason for this, because we haven't really talked about how to persist data on an app with things like Cordova and Ionic, right? There's a bit of a hiccup there. You will be able to perform full CRUD for your to-do list, so you will need to create all required views. So if there's any views that you need to do, like for example, to add or anything else like that, then you can add additional views, but I'm only looking for 2 primarily. Note, it says here, and this is what I have to kind of put up for people who are not going to be using Ionic. Remember, I gave you the option in the beginning that if you wanted to use to build an iOS app or an Android app, or use Xamarin Forms, you could totally use one of those technologies, not a problem. I'm totally supportive. Or even if you wanted to use something like, I'll put it up there too, jQuery Mobile. If you're interested in doing that old technology, good luck. It's harder to do it with jQuery Mobile than with Angular, but you can totally do that if you really want to. So if you do, that's fine. And even for your exam, I'm going to allow Android, iOS, Xamarin Forms, or Ionic, or jQuery Mobile. Any one of those frameworks will be fine to make sure that all the requirements for the exam are met. Right? It's not a big issue. Again, for the exam, just high level. If I do have any multiple choice, which I will announce next week, I'll know more of what's going to be on the exam next week. Then I'll let you know. And truly, it'll be just, what does this piece of code do? Why are we using this? That kind of stuff. And then there'll be a series of multiple choice questions, and I might combine them with a little bit of functionality that you put together, similar to a little tutorial walkthrough that you're doing right now. Okay. All right. So what are you doing here? I want you to have at least 2 views, to-do list view, right? And a to-do detail view. This is very similar to what we did last time in COMP3068. However, again, the twist comes into, this is all have to be done with, with Ionic, right? Or some kind of iOS or Android application, right? And this is where I always say there's like 3, I have to say there's 3 Hello World apps I always talk about, right? 3. Actually, there's 4. There's Hello World, right? Where you kind of put up a label and you launch your app, right? Any kind of app, that's the one for sure. If you can't do that, then there's a problem. Number 2, a calculator of some sort, which we've already done, right? Number 3, all right, some kind of to-do list or data-driven app, all right? So that way you get to know how to, manage data, your views, two-way data binding, all that kind of stuff that can happen in applications. That's number 3. And number 4, because I always build a game in almost every application, every platform. It's a very simple game that I started with you guys last week, right? Mail Pilot, that kind of stuff is what I build on across all platforms. Whether it's I'm using Unity, I'm using OpenGL, whatever I'm doing, I always do the same kind of game over and over again because it helps me understand the framework, right? And the platform that I'm using, and the API calls. And so this sounds like it's tedious, right? Because you're like, Tom, you're building the same thing over and over again. Yes, because once you build the same thing over and over again, you can compare it to what you've already done. You've got a comparable, right? Otherwise, you don't have a comparable. And what you do in one, you can't do in another one. The other thing that I like to do is every time I build the same app over and over again, another one would be a portfolio app across different kind of platforms. That's another to-do list, or another what I like to call Hello World. Because if I can build a portfolio on PHP, or on, if I want to build a portfolio on ASP.NET, or if I build a portfolio on a Node, right? Again, the back-end technologies are totally different for all those 3, right? There's 3 different solution stacks, right? And it's a good opportunity for you just to spin the content into different solutions. Even WordPress would be another solution that you could use which is more PHP. But again, there's, when you use a content management system, there's learnings there as well. So, so those are some of the exercises that I do in real life, daily life, to try and figure out a framework. The other thing I also do is things like how to integrate GitHub with new types of editors and so on. So this to-do list, again, although it may seem easy at first, just like the calculator, it's not easy because you have to make it work with your framework, whatever that framework is you've chosen, right? So the details are here. Basically, what I'm looking for is 3 properties that do not have to persist. I want you to choose a data store solution some way, a local data store solution that I'm talking about, like in an array or some other collection or a list of some kind or whatever. You can also mock it up with different mock-up frameworks. I have no problem with that. It doesn't have to physically connect to a database, local or remote, for this iteration. And the reason for that is because when you connect to a database, we haven't covered that yet, on a device, it becomes very challenging. I'll give you an example for iOS. For iOS to use SQLite, right, which is a kind of a in-house database engine that you use, you need to use Swift 3, here's a good example, and Objective-C as a wrapper. So to me, that is a real pain. It's very challenging to do that properly. And the code online, especially for Swift 3, just to give you an example for iOS, sometimes the code you'll see online doesn't work. Right? It's just the way it is because they've changed so many things. So iOS with SQLite or even some of the other storage solutions, whether you're using a plist or so a preferences list, or whether you're using something called Core Data, any one of those solutions with iOS, very challenging. Android's very similar in that. They have user preferences as well as a SQLite, which is like almost exactly like iOS's SQLite. However, I think on Android, it's easier. You still just use Java, which is really good. Whereas in iOS, you kind of mixed all kinds of technologies together. Xamarin Forms, there's no, it's not easy to do it properly to make it work. It looks easy at first, but there's all kinds of connectors and classes that you have to use. So it becomes very challenging to do local storage on Xamarin. So again, depending on the platform you've chosen, it's really challenging. And here in Ionic, I've given you a bonus opportunity for this one. And I've given you the link down here in the bottom, which says, if you really want to make local storage work, take a look at these docs for Ionic. And it actually tells you how to do storage here. So before I talk about it, if you want to learn how to do it on your own, I will talk about it anyway. I'll give you 4 bonus marks for this one. If you want to use it, some kind of app, to connect, or a connection to Firebase, which is a very popular solution these days for mobile applications and even desktop applications. That's fantastic. If you learn how to do Firebase, I'll give you 6 bonus marks. You can't do both, kind of, right? So it's either 4 or 6. That's what you'll get.
If you use local storage for saving some data.
If you make a case for it, and if there's a reason why you'd want to do something like that, then you'd have to make a case for it. Talk to me about it ahead of time. Yeah, maybe I won't give you 10 marks, but I might give you something else. There might be some other things that we talk about, right? But anyways, there's some opportunities. The one that's easy one that I want you to try on your own, outside of the regular to-do list, is see if you can count how many to-dos are active, right? That's kind of something that you can do easily, or you have how many active to-dos you have out of the total number of tasks, right? How many active, not the ones that have been checkmarked. You also have to include, just to kind of continue with this, the to-do details view, which is basically, kind of, you can actually put in some additional details. It's almost like a details page. And then, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, the update, delete, and cancel button will allow you to do kind of full CRUD operations, or complete the full CRUD operations on your to-do list. And again, we're just mocking it up. I don't expect for you to physically be able to remove data from a data store or anything like that at this point. And because there's some complexity around it. There is an internal documentation requirement. Please don't miss this. This is 4 marks. It's kind of easy to to do. And GitHub, of course. So submitting your work, an archive of your app's project files, zip archive, please, not RAR, a link to your GitHub repo, and a list of any bonus functionality for easy marking. And I put that in there this time because people, for whatever reason, say, well, you didn't see this. Well, no, I didn't, because as I'm marking everybody, it's, it's hard to do. Yeah.
Can you put not RAR there?
Not RAR. Okay, well, I can record it all the time, but sure. Zip.
Oh, yeah. It's in the recording.
Yeah, not RAR. There we go. Okay. No, it's not that. There's other issues when I do it. It's I run frequently into problems with students who don't zip up the entire folder. They use RAR, and RAR only selects part of it sometimes. So that's why I get incomplete project files and those kind of things. That's why. It's not because I can't open up a RAR file. It's because students don't know. Some students don't know how to RAR things up properly and kind of send it to me. All right. So UI, interface design evaluation criteria, is 12. Most marks are from functionality. That's half the marks in this one is all functionality, which is the major part of it. And again, it's worth 40 marks. It's worth 15% of your final. So this one in assignment 1 is worth 30% plus your exam, right? So that's going to be almost 50% right there, plus any kind of bonus marks that you've accumulated with lab 1, lab 2, and anything you've done with assignment 1 or assignment 2 should give you close to the 50% mark, if not over, by the time you're at the exam point. Okay? Any questions around assignment 2? And again, if you've done assignment 2, a to-do list from before, from last semester, for example, or the semester before when you did COMP3025, you may already have some views you can reuse, some parts of it, some HTML that you can use already. And I'm okay with that. It's not the view that I'm so concerned about. It's the functionality behind the view and how it connects with Angular and Ionic, or if you're using, iOS or Android, making that work with iOS or Android in an app that's going to be on mobile. That's the challenge. The challenge is not the HTML and all that stuff. That's why there is a UI component, but it's not high. Okay. So that's really what's due. That's by exam week, so week 7. That's when this thing is due. It'll give you a chance to. That's why I'm getting you to do Angular today. We're doing the Angular lab. Next week, stay tuned. Remember that when we do, this is due on the Tuesday, so Tuesday before class, right? Just like we always do it. Okay, the other thing I also want to talk about here is next week, stay tuned. We will do Ionic and review for the exam. So when we get together next week, be aware we're probably going to do another walkthrough of Ionic. But the great thing with that is we'll have a little example up to put together. If you do the walkthrough and you've done Angular, then your exam will be breeze, right? No problem if you're doing that kind of stuff. If you're someone who's using iOS or Android and you don't want to do the Ionic stuff, that's okay. My expectation is, especially for labs like tonight and all that kind of stuff is, and I'm okay with this, and I'll put it out there, I'm not going to expect you to learn Ionic if you're doing Android or iOS. It doesn't make any sense. So if you're doing iOS or Android and you really don't want to do Ionic, you don't want to learn it, but you want to kind of submit the same walkthrough, good luck on that one, right? With your Android or iOS, that's almost like creating a whole app, which is way harder. If you really want to go there and go through the steps of learning how to do that, converting what you see online to an Android or iOS application or Xamarin app, be my guest. As long as you tell me what you're using from a submission criteria perspective, I'm good, right? I mean, I'll be able to load it up and work it, right? But it's got to work. These are the things that I've, if you want to learn on your own, and a lot of the iOS and Android people, kind of want to push themselves to learn iOS or Android or Xamarin or whatever, I'm all good with it, but you just have to make sure that you adhere to the rough idea of what I'm asking you for this lab, or whatever. Although I do think that it'd be far easier for you to follow the tutorial. Any questions around lab 2 and or assignment 2, which is lab 2 is due tonight at midnight. It's not short. It's a bit longish, which means if you're diligent at it, you'll be able to finish it within about another hour from now. If you're, if you don't, you lose 2% of your final grade, right? So this is like bonus I'm talking about. Like I'm paying you to do it, right? And the same thing goes if you're doing an iOS or Android app. I'm giving you 2% bonus if you get something done that's equivalent to the Hero Tour, right? Tour of Heroes. And remember, assignment 2 is due next week. Any questions around that? Guys, thank you so much. I'll see you next week. And by next week, my hope is that all your marking will be up to date. So we'll have a good understanding of where we are going into the exam. Okay? Thank you.